All hope had drained from Pixis's cold reptilian eyes as he contemplated waking the primitive, violent ape from its frozen slumber. What choice did he have when they couldn't fix this alone? Pixis stabbed the intercom's keypad to summon Zevon. The junior diplomat rushed into the dim chamber. He clicked eagerly. "Is it true? Are we really waking the human?" Pixis nodded resignedly. His scales felt heavy. "The terraforming on Zara Prime malfunctioned. The atmosphere is becoming toxic. 500,000 colonists will die if we don't fix it soon. We have the most advanced science in the galaxy. Why don't we—" Inside the frosted glass lay a large fur-covered creature. Bulky muscles strained against the pod's confines. They called it Wayne Simmons. "I thought humans were just dumb, violent primates," Zevon said, confused. "Why would the High Council think they can help us?" Pixis sighed. "Humans are unpredictable, chaotic. They see solutions we can't because they think so differently." He shook his head. "If this Wayne creature fails, our people on Zara Prime all die, and the blood will be on our claws for waking him." Zevon shifted nervously, studying the frozen human. He tried to imagine the mind that lay dormant within that primitive skull. Would this gamble pay off, or unleash something far worse than a ruined terraforming engine? Only time would tell. Pixis inputted the sequence to revive Wayne Simmons from cryosleep. The pod beeped and hissed. It was time to roll the dice on humanity. As the pod began to thaw, Pixis looked over at Zevon. He could see the anticipation shimmering in the younger one's bright eyes. "I know what you're thinking," Pixis said, his voice low and steady. "But there's more to this human than meets the eye. His name is Wayne Simmons, and he was part of an expedition from Earth, sent to explore a distant star system." Zevon's head tilted, his interest piqued. What happened to them? Pixis's claws tapped against the control panel. Their ship malfunctioned catastrophically during the journey. To survive, the crew entered cryosleep, hoping someone would intercept their distress signal. "And we did," Zevon said, his voice tinged with awe. Pixis nodded. "We brought their ship here to study them and their technology. That was 5 years ago." Zevon's brow furrowed. 5 years? Why didn't we wake them sooner if they're so brilliant?" Pixis sighed, his shoulders sagging. The High Council was divided. Many argued that the humans posed a threat to our way of life. They feared what might happen if we roused them. But now with Zara Prime— Exactly. The High Council is desperate enough to take the risk. Pixis gestured to the pod. Simmons was the chief engineer on their ship. He's known for his ability to improvise solutions under pressure. Zevon's eyes widened. "You think he can fix the terraforming engine?" "We have to hope so. Our scientists are preparing an envirosuit to protect him from our atmosphere, and we've assembled a team to work with him." Zevon bounced on his toes, his excitement palpable. "I can't wait to see him in action, to witness that kind of problem-solving firsthand." Pixis placed a steadying hand on Zevon's shoulder. "I share your enthusiasm, but let's remain cautiously optimistic. There's a lot riding on this human's abilities." The pod beeped, signaling the end of the thawing process. Pixis and Zevon exchanged a glance, both knowing that the fate of their people hung in the balance. As the pod hissed open, they held their breath, waiting to meet the human they hoped would be their savior. Pixis and Zevon stood in the observation room, watching intently as the team of Zarantine medics worked to revive Wayne Simmons from his cryogenic slumber. The human's vital signs were displayed on a large monitor, each one slowly climbing towards normal levels as his body temperature rose. The process of waking a human from cryosleep is a delicate one, Pixis explained to Zevon, his eyes never leaving the prone form of Simmons. Their bodies need time to adjust to the sudden change in temperature and environment. Too fast, and they risk going into shock. Zevon nodded, his own gaze fixed on the human. He watched in fascination as Simmons's eyelids began to flutter, his consciousness slowly returning. "Look, he's waking up!" Zevon exclaimed, his voice tinged with excitement. Pixis leaned forward, studying Simmons' face as the human's eyes slowly opened. The man blinked several times, his gaze unfocused as he took in his surroundings. "He appears to be disoriented and confused," Pixis noted, his brow furrowing. "But that's to be expected given how long he's been in cryosleep." Just then, the door to the observation room opened, and a tall, slender Zarantine entered. Pixis and Zevon turned to face the newcomer, recognizing him as Raxon, one of the High Council's most skilled diplomats. "Pixis Zevon," Raxon greeted, inclining his head. "I've been assigned to brief the human on the situation and the reason for his awakening." Pixis' expression grew troubled. "I'm concerned about how he will react to the news of the terraforming crisis," he admitted, "and our request for his help. It's a lot to take in, especially for someone who's been asleep for so long." Raxon placed a reassuring hand on Pixis' shoulder. "I understand your concerns," he said, his voice calm and measured. "But I assure you, I will handle the situation with the utmost care and diplomacy. We need Simmons' cooperation if we're to have any hope of saving Zara Prime." With that, Raxon turned and exited the observation room, making his way towards the chamber where Simmons was being held. Pixis and Zevon watched through the one-way glass as the diplomat entered, approaching the human with a friendly smile. "Mr. Simmons," Raxon began, his voice warm and welcoming, "my name is Raxon and I'm here on behalf of the Zarantine High Council. I understand that you must have many questions, and I'm here to provide you with answers." Simmons, still groggy from the awakening process, pushed himself into a sitting position. He rubbed at his eyes, trying to clear the fog from his mind. "Where am I?" he asked, his voice rough from disuse. "What happened to my crew?" Raxon took a seat beside the human's bed, his expression one of sympathy and understanding. "Mr. Simmons, I'm afraid there's a lot that's happened since you entered cryogenic sleep," he said gently. "But before we get into that, I need to explain why we've brought you here, and why we need your help." As Raxon began to recount the events that had led to Simmons' awakening, Pixis and Zevon watched with bated breath. They knew that the fate of their people rested on the human's shoulders, and they could only hope that he would be willing to lend his aid. The anticipation and anxiety in the room were palpable as they waited to see how Simmons would respond to the Zarantine's plea for help. As Raxon detailed the dire situation unfolding on Zara Prime, Pixis and Zevon watched Simmons intently through the observation window. The human's face remained impassive, his eyes focused and unblinking as he absorbed every word. Pixis leaned forward, his claws clicking against the console. "He's taking this remarkably well," he murmured to Zevon. "I expected more of a reaction." Zevon nodded, his own gaze fixed on Simmons. "He seems to be processing the information with a level of calm and composure that's almost unnerving." As Raxon concluded his briefing, Simmons leaned back in his chair, his brow furrowed in thought. "I have a few questions," he said, his voice steady and measured. "Can you provide more details on the specifics of the terraforming process? What technology was used and what steps have already been taken to address the issue?" Raxon glanced at Pixis and Zevon, who nodded their approval. The diplomat turned back to Simmons and began to outline the intricacies of the terraforming project, his voice calm and patient as he answered each of the human's questions in turn. Pixis leaned closer to Zevon, his voice low. "Did you hear the depth of his questions? He has a keen understanding of terraforming principles. His mind is sharp, analytical." Zevon hummed in agreement, his eyes still locked on the human. "And Raxon seems impressed by his knowledge and approach. Look at how he's providing Simmons with all the available data, holding nothing back." As the conversation between Raxon and Simmons progressed, Zevon noticed a shift in the human's demeanor. His eyes narrowed, his brow creased in concentration as he processed the information. "He's formulating a plan," Zevon whispered, his voice tinged with awe. "You can see it in his eyes, the way his mind is working." Suddenly, Simmons stood up from his chair and began to pace the room, his hands clasped behind his back as he muttered to himself, his words too low for the observers to hear. Raxon looked to Pixis and Zevon, unsure of how to proceed. Pixis held up a claw, signaling for patience. "Let him think," he said, his voice quiet but firm. He needs space to work through the problem. We should leave him be for now. Raxon nodded and exited the room, leaving Simmons alone with his thoughts. Pixis and Zevon followed suit, stepping out into the corridor. Zevon couldn't contain his excitement, his words tumbling out in a rush. "Did you see that? The way he grasped the situation so quickly, the determination in his eyes, it's incredible." Pixis held up a claw, tempering Zevon's enthusiasm. "It's a promising start," he agreed, "but we have a long way to go before the crisis is resolved. Simmons's success is far from guaranteed." Zevon sobered, nodding in understanding. "Of course you're right, but still, to witness a human's problem-solving skills firsthand, it's a rare opportunity." Pixis hummed in agreement, his gaze drifting back to the closed door of the observation room. "Indeed it is. Let us hope that Simmons's reputation as a brilliant engineer is well-founded. The fate of Zara Prime may very well depend on it." Several hours passed, as Pixis and Zevon waited anxiously outside the observation room. When they finally returned, they found Simmons surrounded by a group of Zarantine scientists, all of them hunched over a large holographic display of Zara Prime's terraforming system. Pixis approached quietly, not wanting to interrupt. He could hear Simmons explaining something, his voice steady and confident. "If we modify the atmospheric processes to account for the higher concentrations of nitrogen in Zara Prime's atmosphere, we can stabilize the terraforming process." One of the Zarantine scientists, a tall female with iridescent scales, shook her head. "But our models never accounted for nitrogen levels that high. The processes weren't designed for it." Simmons pulled up a new schematic on the display. "True, but if we recalibrate the intake valves and rewrite the filtration algorithms, we can adapt the processes to handle the increased nitrogen load." The scientists leaned in, studying Simmons's diagrams intently. Pixis glanced at Zevon, noting the surprised respect on the younger Zarantine's face. It was clear that Simmons had won over the initially skeptical scientists. "His grasp of the technology is remarkable," Pixis murmured to Zevon. "He's proposing solutions our own experts never considered." Zevon nodded, his eyes wide. "He's brilliant. But are we sure this will work? Modifying the terraforming system is risky. We're betting the lives of the colonists on this human's theories." Simmons seemed to overhear Zevon's concerns. He turned to address the two observers directly. "I understand your hesitation," he said, his gaze level and serious. "But we're out of options. The terraforming is failing. If we don't act boldly, Zara Prime will become uninhabitable." Pixis stepped forward, meeting Simmons's eyes. "And you believe your modifications will work? That they can save the colonists?" Simmons nodded firmly. "I do, but we need to act quickly. Every hour we delay puts more lives at risk." The Zarantine scientists exchanged glances, then turned to Pixis. The iridescent-scaled female spoke up. "Counselor, we believe the human's proposal has merit. With your permission, we're ready to begin implementing the modifications immediately." Pixis felt the weight of the decision resting on his shoulders, but looking at Simmons, seeing the certainty and determination in the human's eyes, he felt a flicker of hope. "Do it," he said. "Let's save Zara Prime." As the scientists sprang into action, gathering equipment and barking orders, Pixis watched Simmons roll up his sleeves and dive into the work. The human moved with a focused intensity, his brilliant mind already racing ahead to the next challenge. For the first time since the terraforming crisis began, Pixis dared to believe they might just succeed. And it was all thanks to one extraordinary human, Wayne Simmons, who had traveled across the stars to be their unlikely savior. "He's their only hope," Zevon said softly, echoing Pixis's thoughts. "If anyone can pull off this desperate gambit, it's him." Pixis nodded, his eyes never leaving Simmons' working form. The human had a long road ahead of him, and the fate of an entire world resting on his shoulders. But in that moment, watching Simmons work miracles with nothing but his wits and determination, Pixis knew one thing for certain. If any being in the galaxy could save Zara Prime, it was Wayne Simmons. The human had already achieved the impossible by winning over the Zarantine scientists and devising a plan to salvage the failing terraforming system. Now, as he worked alongside the Zarantine experts to implement his bold vision, Pixis couldn't help but marvel at the sheer audacity and brilliance of this strange, remarkable creature. Humanity, it seemed, was full of surprises. And in Wayne Simmons, the Zarantine had found an ally unlike any they had ever known. Pixis could only hope that Simmons's ingenuity and determination would be enough to overcome the daunting challenges that lay ahead. As the frenetic activity in the observation room continued, Simmons at the center of it all, Pixis and Zevon could only watch and wait, their hearts filled with a tentative, desperate hope. The fate of Zara Prime and the lives of its 500,000 colonists now rested in the capable hands of one extraordinary human. Several days had passed since Wayne Simmons and the team of Zarantine scientists had begun implementing the humans' bold plan to salvage the failing terraforming system on Zara Prime. Pixis and Zevon found themselves seated in the grand chamber of the Zarantine High Council, awaiting a progress report from Raxon, the diplomat who had been overseeing the project. As Raxon took his place at the center of the chamber, the murmurs of conversation among the council members fell silent. Pixis leaned forward in his seat, his claws clasped together in anticipation. "Esteemed members of the High Council," Raxon began, his voice clear and steady, "I come before you today with news of the terraforming project on Zara Prime and the invaluable contributions of our human ally, Wayne Simmons." Raxon activated a holographic display, which sprang to life in the center of the chamber. Detailed schematics of the modified terraforming technology rotated slowly, accompanied by graphs and charts showing the initial results of the tests conducted on Zara Prime. "As you can see," Raxon continued, "the modifications proposed by Simmons have led to significant improvements in the efficiency and effectiveness of the terraforming process. The atmospheric processes are now able to handle the higher concentrations of nitrogen, and the filtration algorithms have been optimized to maintain a stable balance of gases." Pixis nodded along with Raxon's explanation, impressed by the level of detail and the promising results. However, he noticed Zevon shifting uncomfortably in his seat, a look of concern on his face. "Forgive me, Raxon," Zevon said, raising a claw. "While these initial results are indeed impressive, what about the potential long-term effects of these modifications? Have they been thoroughly tested?" Raxon met Zevon's gaze, his expression confident. "I assure you, Zevon, that Simmons and the team have run extensive simulations and have taken every precaution to ensure the safety and stability of the terraforming process. We would not have proceeded with the implementation if we were not confident in the long-term viability of the modifications." As the meeting progressed, Pixis noticed a growing divide among the council members. Some seemed resistant to the idea of relying on a human to solve their problems, arguing that it set a dangerous precedent and could undermine the Zarantine's reputation as a technologically advanced species. "We cannot allow ourselves to become dependent on the aid of lesser species," one council member argued, his scales flashing with agitation. "What message does it send to the galaxy if we, the Zarantine, must turn to a human for help?" However, others on the council, including the chief scientist, spoke out in support of Simmons' contributions. "We would be foolish to dismiss the value of outside perspectives," the chief scientist said, her voice calm but firm. "Simmons has demonstrated a remarkable ability to innovate and problem-solve. His contributions have been invaluable, and we should be open to seeking help from other species when necessary." Zevon, playing devil's advocate, raised another concern. "But what of the potential risks of sharing our technology and knowledge with humans? Their history is one of conflict and aggression. Can we trust them not to misuse what they learn from us?" Pixis found himself speaking up, his voice steady and measured. "While your concerns are valid, Zevon, I believe that Simmons has demonstrated remarkable compassion and dedication to helping our people, despite having no prior connection to our species. He has worked tirelessly to find a solution to our crisis, and his actions speak louder than any historical precedent." As the debate continued, Pixis couldn't help but reflect on the extraordinary circumstances that had brought them to this point. The fate of 500,000 Zarantine colonists hung in the balance, and the success or failure of Simmons' plan would have far-reaching implications for their species. It was a gamble, there was no denying that. But as Pixis looked around the chamber, at the faces of his fellow council members, he saw a glimmer of hope amidst the uncertainty. They had taken a leap of faith in turning to Simmons for help, and now they could only wait and see if that faith would be rewarded. The meeting adjourned without a clear consensus, but Pixis knew that the true test of Simmons's plan would come in the days and weeks ahead as the modified terraforming system began to take effect on Zara Prime. The future of their species and the legacy of their decision to seek aid from a human would be determined by the success or failure of this one, desperate gambit. As Pixis and Zevon exited the council chamber, they exchanged a glance heavy with the weight of the moment. They had set events in motion that could change the course of Zarantine history, for better or for worse. And at the center of it all was one remarkable human, Wayne Simmons, who had come to them from across the stars, bearing the hope of salvation in his brilliant, unconventional mind. The die had been cast, and now all they could do was wait and see where this strange, unpredictable path would lead them. The fate of Zara Prime and the future of the Zarantine species rested in the hands of a single, extraordinary human. It was a strange and terrifying thing to place so much trust in an outsider, but as Pixis reflected on all that had happened since Simmons's awakening, he couldn't help but feel a flicker of hope amidst the uncertainty. Maybe, just maybe, this was the beginning of a new era for the Zarantine, an era in which they learned to look beyond their own species for answers, to embrace the unexpected and the unconventional, an era in which the wisdom and ingenuity of a single human could change the course of their history. As Pixis and Zevon exited the council chamber, the weight of the decision hung heavy in the air. The corridors of the Zarantine research facility seemed to buzz with a new energy, a sense of purpose and determination that had been absent in the days leading up to the meeting. "I can't believe they agreed to it," Zevon said, his voice tinged with a mix of awe and disbelief. "I thought for sure the council would balk at the idea of entrusting our fate to a human." Pixis nodded, his claws clicking against the polished floor as they walked. "I had my doubts as well," he admitted, "but the chief scientist's endorsement carried a lot of weight, and the evidence Simmons and the team presented was hard to ignore." "Still," Zevon mused, "it's a big risk. We're putting a lot of faith in this human's abilities." "True," Pixis agreed. "But what choice do we have? The terraforming crisis on Zara Prime is reaching a critical point. If we don't act now, we risk losing everything we've worked so hard to build." As they rounded a corner, the sound of animated conversation reached their ears. Pixis and Zevon exchanged a curious glance before quickening their pace, eager to discover the source of the commotion. They found Simmons and Raxon huddled around a large holographic display, their faces illuminated by the soft blue glow of the projected schematics. Simmons was gesturing enthusiastically, his voice rising with excitement as he outlined his vision for the next phase of the project. "And if we can get these modifications implemented across the entire network of atmospheric processors," he was saying, "we should start seeing significant improvements in the air quality within a matter of weeks." Raxon, his own eyes wide with wonder, nodded along eagerly. "Incredible," he breathed. "I never would have thought to approach the problem from that angle." Simmons grinned, his confidence infectious. "Sometimes it takes an outsider's perspective to see the solutions that are right in front of us." Pixis cleared his throat, drawing the attention of the two engrossed figures. "Wayne, Raxon," he greeted, inclining his head, "I see you're already hard at work." Simmons straightened, his expression sobering slightly. "Pixis, Zevon," he acknowledged. "We were just discussing the next steps for the project. I assume the council has reached a decision?" Pixis nodded, a small smile tugging at the corners of his mouth. "They have. The vote was in favor of proceeding with your plan. The chief scientist's endorsement, combined with the progress you've already made, was enough to convince them of the merits of your approach." Simmons's face split into a wide grin, his eyes sparkling with renewed energy. "That's fantastic news," he said, clapping his hands together. "With the Council's backing, we can really start to make some headway." Zevon, still cautious but finding himself caught up in the humans' enthusiasm, stepped forward. "What kind of timeline are we looking at?" he asked, his brow furrowed. "When can we expect to see real results on Zara Prime?" Simmons rubbed his chin thoughtfully, his gaze drifting back to the holographic display. "Well, a lot depends on how quickly we can get the modifications in place," he said. "But if everything goes according to plan, I believe we could start seeing meaningful improvements in the atmospheric conditions within a few weeks." Pixis felt a thrill of hope run through him at the human's words. It was an ambitious timeline, to be sure, but something about Simmons' confidence was contagious. He found himself believing, perhaps for the first time since the crisis began, that they might actually be able to pull this off. As Simmons and Raxon dove back into their planning, their voices rising with renewed fervor, Pixis turned to Zevon. "It's remarkable, isn't it?" he said softly. "The way he's managed to bring everyone together, to inspire such hope in the face of overwhelming odds." Zevon nodded, his own expression thoughtful. "I have to admit I had my doubts about involving a human in our affairs, but seeing him in action, the way he's won over even the most skeptical among us, it's hard not to be impressed." Pixis clapped a hand on his young colleague's shoulder, his eyes glinting with a newfound sense of purpose. "We'll need to keep a close eye on the project's progress," he said, "and be ready to provide whatever support Simmons and the team need. But for now, I think we can allow ourselves a moment of optimism. Thanks to our human friend, we may just have a fighting chance after all." With that, the two Zarantine turned and made their way down the corridor, their steps lighter than they had been in weeks. The road ahead was still long and uncertain, but for the first time in a long time, they had reason to hope. As they walked, Zevon glanced over at Pixis, a thought occurring to him. "You know," he said slowly, "I can't help but wonder what the rest of the galaxy will think when they hear about this. A human, of all beings, coming to the aid of the Zarantine in our darkest hour." Pixis chuckled, the sound echoing off the polished walls. "Oh, I imagine there will be no shortage of raised eyebrows and whispered speculations," he said, his tone amused. "But let them talk. What matters is that we're doing what needs to be done to save our people. And if that means putting our trust in an outsider, then so be it." Zevon nodded, a smile tugging at the corners of his mouth. "I suppose you're right," he said, "and who knows? Maybe this will be the start of a new era for the Zarantine, a time when we learn to look beyond our own borders for help and inspiration." With that, the two Zarantine lapsed into a comfortable silence, each lost in their own thoughts as they made their way through the winding corridors of the research facility. The future was still uncertain, but for now they had a glimmer of hope to cling to, and that in itself was a small victory. Weeks had passed since Wayne Simmons and his team of Zarantine scientists had begun implementing the modified terraforming technology on Zara Prime. Pixis and Zevon, eager to witness the progress firsthand, stepped off the shuttle onto the planet's surface. As they emerged, they were immediately struck by the dramatic change in the atmosphere. Gone was the toxic haze that had once blanketed the planet, replaced now by clear, breathable air. Pixis took a deep breath, marveling at the freshness that filled his lungs. "Remarkable," he murmured, his eyes scanning the horizon. "The difference is astounding." Zevon nodded in agreement, his own expression one of awe. "I can hardly believe it," he said, "to think that just a few short weeks ago this planet was on the brink of collapse." As they stood taking in the transformed landscape, a familiar figure approached. It was Raxon, the Zarantine diplomat who had been overseeing the terraforming project. He greeted Pixis and Zevon with a warm smile, his scales glinting in the now clear sunlight. "Welcome to Zara Prime," Raxon said, spreading his arms wide. "As you can see, the results of Simmons' work have been nothing short of extraordinary." Pixis clasped Raxon's hand, his own smile genuine. "Indeed they have," he agreed. "We're eager to see the progress up close." Raxon led them away from the shuttle, towards a sprawling complex of buildings that housed the terraforming control center. As they walked, he filled them in on the latest developments. "Simmons and the team have been working around the clock," he explained. "The modifications they've made to the terraforming technology have exceeded even our most optimistic projections." Inside the control center, they found Simmons and the Zarantine scientists huddled around a bank of monitors, their faces lit by the glow of the screens. Simmons looked up as they entered, his eyes bright with excitement. "Pixis, Zevon," he greeted, rising to shake their hands. "I'm glad you could make it. There's so much to show you." Pixis, impressed by the tangible results he had already seen, couldn't help but ask about the specifics of the modifications. "Your work has been remarkable," he said. "Can you tell us more about the changes you've made to the terraforming process?" Simmons grinned, clearly eager to dive into the details. "Of course," he said, leading them over to a large holographic display. "One of the key breakthroughs we've made is the introduction of a new catalytic agent into the atmospheric conversion process." He brought up a series of complex diagrams on the screen, pointing out the relevant components. "This catalyst accelerates the breakdown of toxic compounds in the atmosphere while simultaneously enhancing the production of oxygen and nitrogen." Zevon leaned in, studying the diagrams with rapt attention. "Fascinating," he murmured, "and the results speak for themselves. The air outside is cleaner than I ever could have imagined." Simmons nodded, pride evident in his expression. "It's been a team effort," he said, gesturing to the Zarantine scientists around him. "Everyone here has worked tirelessly to make this a reality." As they continued to discuss the technical details of the terraforming process, Zevon's mind turned to the broader implications. "This is incredible work," he said, "but I can't help but wonder, could these modifications be applied to other Zarantine colonies facing similar challenges?" Simmons considered the question, his brow furrowing thoughtfully. "Absolutely," he said after a moment. "The principles we've developed here are robust and adaptable. With some tweaks to account for differing planetary conditions, I'm confident that this technology could be used to terraform a wide range of environments." Pixis felt a thrill of excitement at the prospect. The success of the Zara Prime project was a monumental achievement in its own right, but the potential for this technology to transform the Zarantine's colonization efforts was staggering. As they toured the facilities, speaking with the various scientists and engineers involved in the project, Pixis and Zevon were struck by the atmosphere of camaraderie and shared purpose that Simmons had fostered among the team. Zarantine and human alike spoke of him with a deep respect and admiration, crediting his leadership and innovative thinking with making the impossible possible. "He's a true visionary," one Zarantine engineer said, her voice filled with awe. "Before Simmons arrived, many of us had lost hope. We thought Zara Prime was doomed, but he showed us a new way forward, a path we never could have found on our own." Another scientist chimed in, nodding in agreement. "His perspective is invaluable. He sees solutions where we see only obstacles, and he has a way of bringing out the best in everyone around him. It's been an honor to work alongside him." As they listened to the outpouring of praise, Pixis found himself reflecting on the profound impact that Simmons had made in such a short time. In just a few weeks, he had not only saved a dying world, but had also fundamentally altered the Zarantine's understanding of what was possible through collaboration and open-mindedness. Looking out over the transformed landscape of Zara Prime, Pixis couldn't help but wonder what other marvels might be achieved if the Zarantine and humanity continued to work together. Simmons had opened a door to a brighter future, one in which the best minds of both species could combine their knowledge and skills to overcome even the most daunting challenges. It was a future that Pixis found himself eager to embrace, and as he glanced over at Zevon, he could see the same excitement and hope reflected in his companion's eyes. The success of the Zara Prime project was just the beginning, a first step on a journey that promised to transform not only the Zarantine, but the entire galaxy. As they prepared to depart Zara Prime, Pixis turned to Simmons, his expression serious. "What you've accomplished here is nothing short of miraculous," he said. "On behalf of the Zarantine people, I want to express our deepest gratitude. You've given us a gift beyond measure." Simmons smiled, shaking his head. "It's been my honor," he said, "but the real credit belongs to the incredible team here. They've worked harder than anyone to make this happen." Pixis clasped Simmons's shoulder, meeting his gaze. "Your modesty does you credit," he said, "but make no mistake, none of this would have been possible without you. You've changed the course of our history, and we will never forget it." With a final nod of respect, Pixis and Zevon boarded the shuttle, their hearts full of gratitude and their minds buzzing with the possibilities of what the future might hold. As the shuttle lifted off, carrying them back to the stars, they knew that they had witnessed something truly extraordinary, a testament to the power of collaboration, innovation, and the indomitable human spirit. The grand hall of the Zarantine High Council was resplendent, filled with shimmering lights and draped in the finest fabrics. Pixis and Zevon, dressed in their most formal attire, entered the hall and marveled at the intricate decorations adorning the walls and ceilings. The atmosphere buzzed with excitement and joy as Zarantine officials and scientists mingled, their scales glinting under the soft glow of the lights. As they took their seats, Pixis leaned in close to Zevon. "Can you believe we're here celebrating the success of a human? If someone had told me this would happen a few months ago, I would have laughed in their face." Zevon chuckled, his eyes scanning the room. "True, it's a testament to how much Simmons has accomplished. The terraforming project on Zara Prime was a monumental task, and he made it happen." The murmur of conversation died down as the chief scientist took the stage, her iridescent scales shimmering under the spotlights. She began her speech, her voice filled with pride and gratitude. "We are gathered here today to honor Wayne Simmons, a human who has shown us the true power of collaboration and innovation. When we first approached him with our problem, many of us had doubts. We faced challenges that seemed insurmountable, and the fate of our people hung in the balance." Pixis nodded, remembering the initial skepticism and resistance from some members of the council. It seemed like a lifetime ago now. The chief scientist continued, "But Simmons, with his unique perspective and problem-solving skills, helped us overcome those obstacles. He worked tirelessly alongside our own scientists and engineers, sharing his knowledge and expertise. Together, they found solutions we had never considered, and they saved Zara Prime." Applause filled the hall, and Pixis found herself joining in, her own claws clicking together in appreciation. Zevon leaned over, his voice low. "This could change everything, you know. The success of the terraforming project could pave the way for more cooperation between our species. Imagine what we could achieve if we established formal channels of exchange and collaboration." Pixis considered his words, her mind racing with possibilities. Before she could respond, Wayne Simmons himself took the stage, and the hall fell silent once more. Simmons, dressed in a specially designed enviro suit, stood tall and proud before the assembled Zarantine. He accepted the highest honor for scientific achievement, a glittering medallion that sparkled under the lights, and began his own speech. "I am humbled and honored to stand before you today," he said, his voice filled with emotion. "When I first awoke from cryogenic sleep, I had no idea what I would find, but what I discovered was a species of incredible intelligence, compassion, and ingenuity." Pixis felt a swell of pride at his words, and she could see similar reactions on the faces of those around her. "The success of the terraforming project was not mine alone," Simmons continued. "It was the result of collaboration, of sharing knowledge and resources across the boundaries of species. It showed me that the challenges we face, whether on Earth, on Zara Prime, or anywhere else in the galaxy, can only be solved if we work together." His words rang true, and Pixis found herself nodding along, moved by the sincerity and conviction in his voice. "This is just the beginning," Simmons said, his eyes scanning the crowd. "There is so much more we can learn from each other, so much more we can achieve together. Let this be a stepping stone to a future of cooperation, understanding, and progress." As the ceremony concluded, and the attendees began to mingle once more, Pixis and Zevon approached Simmons, eager to express their gratitude in person. "Wayne," Pixis said, extending her claw, "we cannot thank you enough for all you've done. Your contributions have been invaluable, and your words today were truly inspiring." Simmons shook her claw, his grip firm and warm even through the envirosuit. "It's been an honor," he said, his eyes crinkling with a smile. "I only hope that this is the start of a long and fruitful partnership between our species." Zevon, unable to contain his curiosity, chimed in. "Speaking of which, what about the other humans in cryogenic sleep? Do you think they might have skills and knowledge that could benefit us in other areas?" Pixis exchanged a glance with Zevon, excitement bubbling up inside her. The possibilities seemed endless. "We would be very interested in discussing this further," she said, her voice eager. "Perhaps we could arrange a meeting with the Council to explore the potential for future collaboration." Simmons nodded, his expression open and receptive. "I think that's a great idea. I'd be happy to discuss it with the Council and with my fellow humans once they're awakened. There's so much we could learn from each other." The sound of laughter and conversation swelled around them as the celebration continued. But for Pixis, the true excitement lay in the prospect of what was to come. The success of the terraforming project had opened a door, and she couldn't wait to see where it would lead. The celebration honoring Wayne Simmons and the successful terraforming of Zara Prime had been a joyous occasion, filled with optimism about the future of Zarantine-human cooperation. However, in the weeks that followed, a shadow fell over the once bright prospects. Pixis and Zevon sat in a private conference room, their expressions somber as they discussed the troubling turn of events. Pixis leaned forward, her claws clasped tightly. "Zevon, I'm afraid I have some concerning news. In the wake of the terraforming project's success, the Zarantine leadership has been discussing the potential risks and benefits of awakening the other humans from cryogenic sleep." Zevon's eyes widened, surprise evident on his scaled face. "What? Why would they consider that now after everything Simmons has done for us?" Pixis sighed. While many Zarantine were impressed by Simmons' contributions, others have grown increasingly wary of the potential influence and power that humans could wield if they were to become more involved in our society. Some factions within the government have even suggested that the humans' cryogenic pods should be destroyed to prevent any future threats. Zevon recoiled. "Destroyed? That's outrageous. It would be a betrayal of the trust and cooperation we've built with Simmons and a violation of the humans' rights." Pixis nodded. "I agree, but the fear and paranoia surrounding humans have been growing, fueled by long-standing prejudices and the realization that humans possess capabilities that could potentially surpass our own." As they discussed the possible outcomes and strategies for addressing the situation, Pixis's communicator chimed with an urgent message. She read it, her voice trembling. "It's from Raxon. Simmons and the other humans have been placed under arrest by a faction of the Zarantine military, led by a general who fears that the humans will eventually try to dominate or destroy us." Zevon stood, disbelief and anger warring on his face. "Under arrest? What can we do to intervene and protect them?" Pixis rose, her expression grim. "We must act quickly and carefully, navigating the complex political landscape to gather support from those who still believe in the value of human-Zarantine cooperation. The fate of not only the humans, but also the future of our two species, hangs in the balance." As they hurried out of the room to begin their efforts, Pixis couldn't help but reflect on the irony of the situation. The very same ingenuity and resourcefulness that had saved Zara Prime and earned Simmons their admiration had now become a source of fear and conflict. She silently hoped that the Zarantine would find a way to overcome their prejudices and embrace the potential for growth and understanding that humans represented. But she knew the path ahead would be fraught with challenges and uncertainties. You have reached the end of the story. If you enjoyed this story and want to support us, please leave a like and subscribe to our channel, and for every comment that says 88, I will heart every single one of them. Thank you for your time.